I'm going to get that going right now and pass it over to Marita and Abel.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Will. My name is Abel Luna, and I'm an organizer with Migrant Justice. I think, yeah, we're gonna get started. I've been here with the organizations a little bit over 6 years now, and I've been a farm worker myself in the Black Bear region of New York State from the ages of 13 to 16 years old.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marita. I am originally from Bolivia, and I'm part of Migrant Justice. I've been with the organization since probably 2012. I've seen the group grow. I've seen a lot of power to the workers, and I want to thank everybody that is joining us today. It's really important that we keep the fight and we keep understanding and supporting our community. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Marita. Yeah, well, thank you everyone for being here today. We want to thank every single one of you for taking the time out of your days. We know these are difficult moments. And how did we ended up doing this webinar? For some of you that might know, and some of you that are not don't know too much, we originally had set out to do a tour across 7 states in the Northeast, doing 24 presentations. But circumstances changed due to the coronavirus, and we had to, to postpone that. And we only were able to complete 7 presentations in 4 different states. So we, want to thank our host again for hosting us, and the host that we're going to host us. Thank you. We're in the middle of a crisis as the coronavirus, and as the government is calling for people to stay home, for people to keep 6 feet away, to self-isolate, to not go out. Farm workers have been deemed essential workers, right? And what does that mean? Right, it means that farm workers have to still get up every day, every morning, and they have to go to work here in Vermont. They have to get up and go milk the cows. And that's something that they have to continue to do. And there's already, for example, a lot of lack of there's overcrowded housing, for example, right? There's lack of protective equipment. There's lack of sick days. So our government is asking, workers to continue to put food on the table for everyone, but yet, working under these very same dangerous conditions, and also, being excluded from some of the benefits, such as as a fund that was created for the unemployment for migrant farm workers cannot apply for that, or to receive the $1,200 check that a lot of people will receive. And we're talking about the people that are milking the cows, picking the food that eats on our tables. They have to be left out. And some of the things that here in Vermont are taking place to support farm workers and farmers, there's a Farmer Relief Fund of Vermont, that is geared to help if farm workers sort of get sick, to have people sort of cover shifts and that is great. And we need more, and that is why we need to continue to work for the long term, to win more human rights, more dignity for farm workers, and transform this industry. And that's what we're going to be getting to a little bit today, about the work that we do, how do we do it, and why do we do it. So we're going to the next slide. Migrant Justice is a grassroots organization that got started and was started by farm workers, formed by farm workers, and to this day continues to be led by farm workers here in Vermont. And our mission as an organization is to build the voice, the capacity, and the power of the farm worker community to transform the reality that people are facing on the dairy farms in Vermont. And we do so by bringing and engaging allies, such as you guys that are here with us today, to advance human rights and achieve economic justice. And so, it's important to understand a little bit of the context of the dairy industry. and how, how does it impact the community and how it relates to the community. In the dairy farms in Vermont, 80 to 90% of the workforce that are maintaining and sustaining some of the most famous brands of ice cream, dairy, cheese, and some of the farms in Vermont are migrant farm workers that are working, from farms that have 75 cows to farms that have up to 1,000 plus cows. So really, it's a broad range. You find workers pretty much in every farm doing very dangerous work, and the job that not a lot of people want to do. And to top that off, you have to do this work year round. It's 365 days a year. You have to be milking cows. People sometimes don't have a day off, working 7 days a week straight. And you have to work, and you live where you work, and you work where you live. Which creates different dynamics that we're gonna get into later. But that contributes to isolation and invisibility, and that creates conditions that are ripe for human right abuses. And so migrant justice started about 10 years ago, after the death of a young farm worker named Jose Obed Santis Cruz. Jose Obed was just a teenager. He was 19 years old and was killed on a workplace accident. Something that could have been prevented and avoided if the right equipment, the right staffing had been in place. But that was the spark to the conversation that there are migrant farm workers maintaining the dairy industry. And also the conversation between the community, right? Workers started to come together to talk about what just had happened, and to talk about how we can avoid more people dying, right? And how can we stop that? And so eventually people started to meet first, in worker housing, and that eventually grew to what we now call community asambleas, or asambleas comunitarias, which basically are safe spaces where farm workers come together, they share a meal, and talk about the issues that people are facing in their workplace. And rather than being an individual issue that I have, now I share it with the group, and it becomes an issue that we're all gonna think about how to tackle it, how to solve that issue, right? And it can have an impact on the community. And so that has been the recipe for success of migrant justice. And in the early years of migrant justice, out of those meetings, we formed what we call our human rights map, or our human rights agenda, which includes 4 main points: the right to freedom from discrimination, the right to access to healthcare, the right to work and live with dignity, and the right to freedom of transportation, or the right to freedom of mobility. And we have been organizing. We have been working hard for the past 10 years, organizing and winning concrete steps and concrete victories to transform that reality, tackling those 4 main points with the driver license. Now you have a driver license in Vermont, with the fair and impartial policing policy, one of the best policies that that we have in the country, and also a meal with dignity. So a lot of achievements have been made, right? To make life better in Vermont, but work and live with dignity has always been on our minds, right, since the very beginning. Yeah, thank you. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague Marita.
Thank you, Abel, and I hope everybody can hear me well. So in the next slide, we can see how the dairy industry marked by labor abuse and human rights violations happen. In the past years, we conducted 2 surveys of almost 300 workers. And some of the results are that half make less than minimum wage. The work average is 60, 80 hours per week. Half with no day off. There is lack of rest. Also with housing, we find people sharing rooms, 2, 3 people sharing a room, problems with clean water, maybe no water, no heating in Vermont, housing conditions that the houses are old. There are high percentages of accidents and injuries with chemicals, heavy machinery, animals, and lack of protection and access to healthcare. Especially now that we're seeing this crisis, this community is more vulnerable to these risks. There is lack of labor protection as well, like exposed to sexual harassment, gender discrimination, unjust firings, and even human trafficking. But not all the farms are bad. We know that there are good farms out there. And we hear from farmers that are working side by side with the workers the same schedule, and they are really struggling too. And we know that it doesn't have to be like this. I want to pass the microphone to my colleague Telma, and she's online, and she can tell us a little bit about her experiences as a woman in a dairy farm.
Sí. ¿Me escuchas, Marita? ¿Me escuchan?
Sí, sí te escucho. And I'm going to be interpreting for her.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Telma, soy miembro de la comunidad migrante aquí en Vermont y he sido trabajadora también. Y sí, algo que verdad, que queríamos contar un poco de la experiencia que he tenido, verdad, cuando pasé en algunos ranchos, y es de esas condiciones que pasan en los ranchos, verdad, y que a veces pues nosotros no sabemos de esas condiciones que pasan en los ranchos y que a veces nosotros no todos llegan a saber, ¿verdad?, qué es realmente lo que está pasando en los ranchos. Y esas condiciones que decía mi compañera, ¿verdad?, como a veces el que nosotros como trabajadores tengamos que vivir en el mismo rancho, es una de las realidades que enfrentan.
Hello, my name is Telma. I'm part of the Migrant Justice team, and I'm a former dairy farm worker. I used to work in farms, and as my friend Marita was sharing, those conditions of having people in crowded houses is something that is a reality. And the same conditions that she was sharing, I lived it on myself.
Sí, y entonces con eso queríamos ver, ¿verdad?, qué tan importante es esta campaña para nosotros como los trabajadores, ese nuevo día, como ya Ben and Jerry, si el programa está funcionando en algunos ranchos, pero no es suficiente, y por eso es bien importante que ustedes, ¿verdad?, escuchen lo que nosotros como trabajadores estamos pidiendo y que sepan que son una parte muy importante para nosotros, ¿verdad?, para nuestra campaña y para nuestra lucha. Ustedes como consumidores, pero como parte de la comunidad aquí en Vermont, también tienen ese poder, ¿verdad?, de cuando compran un galón de leche o compran un yogur o compran algo que viene derivado, ¿verdad?, de la leche. Tomen conciencia, ¿verdad? Invitemos a otros a que tomen conciencia de dónde viene, ¿verdad? Y si el producto que estamos comprando es realmente justo.
So I just want to share that it's really important for us to have a program as Milk with Dignity and to expand this and go into a public campaign. As you're going to hear soon, we had achievements in the Ben & Jerry's dairy supply chain, and we see that this program works, and we want more for everybody. We want to have this with your support. You here as a consumer in Vermont have a big role and impact when you go to the store and get a gallon of milk, yogurt, or any product that comes from dairy. Think about that you can really have products that come with dignity by supporting our struggle, by supporting our fight.
Sí, y nosotros sabemos, ¿verdad?, la parte importante que son los trabajadores, especialmente en estos momentos que estamos viendo con lo del COVID. Los trabajadores siguen, ¿verdad? Las vacas no paran y los trabajadores siguen trabajando. Por eso es importante, ¿verdad?, que reconozcamos los trabajadores, pero no solo por el trabajo que hacen, pero también como a pesar del trabajo que están haciendo, se siguen exponiendo, y si aparte de eso están sufriendo abusos laborales, como en dónde estamos los trabajadores, ¿verdad?
And I ask you that it's really important to recognize the workers, even more now with this COVID-19, where workers cannot stop. They are called essential, and they keep working every day because the cows cannot stop being milked. Workers go every day more exposed to risks, and it's not something that they will like, but they have to be seen. And I ask you to see the workers as important, not only now during time of crisis, but all the time, because they are the ones that if we don't keep working, then there is no food.
Por eso pedimos a que se unan con nosotros los trabajadores. Este es el momento. Queremos solidaridad de parte de todos ustedes y estamos agradecidos, ¿verdad? Como no es la primera vez y sabemos que con el apoyo de todos podemos ganar de nuevo la campaña y seguir adelante.
And this is why we're asking for your support, that you come together and support our efforts and come with us and really take steps forward, because we know we can. We did it before and we can keep on going.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I want to share with you the next slide, and thank you, Thelma, for everything you share with us. One thing is that workers have been analyzing the problems. Why we live in these conditions? And even when farms try to do right by the workers, they are facing economic challenges to improve the conditions. We really think about understanding the root of the problem. And to understand this situation at its root, we have to look at the industry structure. So this pyramid that you see here is a pyramid of corporate supply chain. Dairy, like most industries in today's economy, is structured by corporate supply chains, and you can see who holds the power. On top, there are the corporations, and in the middle, you can see the farms and the co-ops, the processors, that squish at the end the workers. Is any? I think I have a chat that they don't see a pyramid. If you see, can you see the share screen? There is the slide with a pyramid or with a triangle. So corporations that buy the milk control the industry and set the price of milk. We know that few buyers with more power lowers the price of milk and creates the downward pressure on labor conditions. If we think about and see the price of milk today, still the same that it was in the 70s. But the cost of life, of course, not the same. Workers and farmers share many of the same interests in transforming this industry. And we want companies that are responsible for the problems should be held responsible for being part of the solution. We want to turn this pyramid upside down so the workers can really lead. And for that, we have created a program that is called Milk with Dignity. This program brings a new day to the dairy industry. This program solves the problem at its roots because it includes the entire supply chain. How it works. So Migrant Justice signs a legally binding agreement with the corporation, and the corporation takes responsibility for the conditions in their supply chain. The corporation commits to buy from farms in the program and pay them a premium. When the farms receive the premium and commit to use it to comply with a code of conduct that has been written by workers themselves. This code of conduct has standards for wages, hours and rest, housing, health and safety, and creates protections against harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. This code of conduct represents the community definition of dignified work. This code of conduct has been developed by the workers that are the experts in this industry. But for these standards to be meaningful, the farm also must allow Migrant Justice to educate workers on their rights in the programs. So we have a code of conduct, we have the participants, but then there is the education sessions where everybody hears their rights and responsibilities under the program. With this, the workers are empowered to become frontline defenders of their rights and to ensure that the farms are complying with the code. Migrant Justice also created an independent organization to monitor conditions, respond to complaints, and regularly audits all farms in the program. The Milk with Dignity Standards Council is what gives the program teeth, enforces the code of conduct, but also is a resource for farms to come into compliance. They check that the money is invested in the changes that are needed. But also there are consequences. If a farm doesn't comply with the code, the Milk Dignity Standards Council can suspend the farm. This means that the farm will lose the premium and the ability to sell to companies in the program. It's creating a system that really works um, for the farmers to not have to invest on this compliance with the code of conduct. But also there are consequences in enforcement of the standards, which is really important. If we go to the next slide, you can see that the Milk with Dignity program is part of a global model of social change called WSR, Worker-Driven Social Responsibility. This model has been used in many countries and sectors where workers are learning the same lessons of how to advance rights within corporate supply chains. We have learned from the CIW in Florida and the Fair Food Program that are the ones picking up tomatoes and other vegetables about this model and about this program. They now have 14 agreements, and we have formed a network to support worker exchanges and foster learning between organizations. When we learned about this program, we went to Florida, they came here, and we adapted the program from the tomato to dairy. We can see that in Bangladesh, the garment workers are targeting global fashion brands. If you remember, or if you didn't know, there were some fires, big fires in these factories. Now those workers got organized and are part of the fire safety accord. In Minnesota, construction workers are targeting developers. Their program is going to be called Building Dignity and Respect. So this model really works, and it can be adapted to different industries. There are many more that are part of this network. It's a model that organizes supply chains, it's winning contracts with corporations, implement programs designed by workers themselves. So once we created the program, we had to put it in practice and decided a few years ago to lend a first invitation to Ben & Jerry's. I'm going to pass it to Abel now.
Thank you, Marita. Yeah, so once farm workers define exactly what is it that we wanted, and we defined dignity and what it meant, and we had exactly that. We started to look around for different, for a corporation to invite or companies, and Ben & Jerry's is a local company. They're here in Vermont. They buy a lot of a good amount of milk here in Vermont, 80 to 90% of the milk, and come from here farms in Vermont. And they have programs to that talk about animal welfare and the environment, but nothing really that was talking about farm workers and workers' rights, human rights. But they were saying that they were, and so we brought it up. What about the human factor, right? And that's when we sort of started inviting Ben & Jerry's to be a champion in human rights, to join the Milk with Dignity program, something that was designed by workers to fix those human rights abuses in their supply chain. At the beginning, Ben & Jerry's didn't accept and said that those conditions, those issues were not their responsibility. So we went out to the streets. That's we did what we know what to do best. We went out to the streets and we took a fight to the streets. And it was almost a 3-year campaign. There was a lot of pressure from Migrant Justice and from allies to Ben & Jerry's. And we did a bunch of different things, a bunch of different actions. For example, we did many protests in their stores in Vermont and across the country as well. We had National Day of Actions. We did street theaters, and on the screen you can see Wilmar, a worker, a leader in Migrant Justice. He was leading that theater, and it was a very powerful moment when workers can go out and protest and demand what they need. it's powerful. And we did some picketing in the board meetings. And yeah, maybe some of you joined the 13-mile march that we did from Montpelier to the Waterbury factory. And that also, was a big moment in the Ben & Jerry's campaign, the speaking tour as well, similar to what we were doing earlier in March, and all of that, right? And we want to hear from you if you participated. There's a question if you participated during like one of the Ben & Jerry's campaigns or actions. Let us know, answer it, and at the end we're gonna see sort of the results. It's gonna be something really cool. But yeah, pressure was mounting, and sort of Ben & Jerry's, and that was key. Sorry, right? Like the tour and all of the little actions that were taking place. It was really key because that's what Ben & Jerry's understood. The farm workers are not alone, right? And that was a very powerful moment because shortly after, on the next slide, as we can see, on October 3rd, 2017, Ben & Jerry signed onto the first Meal with Dignity, program agreement. It was a historic moment. It's the first time in history that this has been done in the dairy industry. The first time a corporation has sat across the table, to have something now with farm workers in the dairy industry, and that was it's a historic moment. And right now, it's being implemented in 100% of the Northeast dairy supply chain, Ben & Jerry's dairy supply chain, and it's covers about 250 workers under the program, which is about 20% of the dairy industry here in Vermont, and also some farms in New York as well. And as Marita mentioned, one of the things that we do under the program is to go out to give the education sessions on participating farms. And that is, it might not sound something, but it is very transformative. You have never heard of anybody, any boss or manager and workers coming together to talk about their rights and responsibilities, right? And when that happens, and workers are in power, workers know that there are consequences, and people know that there are going to be consequences, and that changes everything. And so we're doing that. The Meal with Dignity Senators Council is monitoring the farms and ensuring that there is compliance with the code of conduct and rights are being met. And hundreds of thousands of dollars, have already flowed directly from Ben & Jerry's into workers' pockets, in different forms, in wage raises, in bonuses, paid vacations, new housing, new trailers, and many other rights that that come to the program. And so it's really working. It's transforming the industry. And more is going to farms as economic relief for the low prices that we're seeing, especially now. The program, it really shows that it works. And it's a new day. The new day has arrived here in the dairy industry in Vermont. And we're living it. We're living the new day. And as we can see, on the next slide, we're going to hear directly from testimonies from farm workers that are under the program about this new day and how their lives are changing.
And before watching the video, I don't know if everybody had the chance to respond the poll. If you had the questionnaire on the side of your screen, and we can see those results.
Mi trabajo empezando pues nos levantamos a la mañana, llegamos, prendemos las máquinas, arreglamos todo, sacamos las vacas del corral, las metemos para ordeñar. O sea, es todo lo que se hace en un día normal, pero que hay ranchos que trabajan de 12 horas corridas, le dan media hora de comida de las 12 horas, eso está más pesado.
¿Por qué es necesario? Porque es importante para nosotros como trabajadores, que salimos de nuestra casa para mejorar nuestras vidas, no para estar viviendo como te dijera, en condiciones que meramente ya no son humanas.
Pero sin el programa nosotros pues no nos aumentaban el sueldo y pues del día de descanso ni se hablara. No sabíamos qué derechos o qué podemos exigir nosotros como trabajadores.
Pues antes aquí no nos tomaban en cuenta como cuando nos enfermábamos. Ni nos llevaban al doctor y pues ese día lo teníamos que trabajar. Y si no lo trabajábamos, pues ese día pues era descontado prácticamente. Y pues ahora bajo el programa de Leche con Dignidad no lo trabajamos y pues aparte no nos pagan y pues ya los patrones no nos llevan al doctor. Y pues eso es muy importante para mí, para nosotros.
Bueno, se siente uno más protegido, porque ya sabe uno puede, o sea, ellos te orientan a lo que puede pasar, a lo que tus derechos que tú tienes como trabajador, el derecho que tienes, el respeto tanto de tu patrón, se siente uno más feliz, más protegido.
Si un día yo, por ejemplo, cuando voy a tirar cal en los grupos o hacer el agua de las patas, no tengo las mascarillas, los guantes, todo lo que necesito para que no me dañe mi salud, entonces ya el patrón tiene que acceder a comprar las cosas.
Ahora ya tenemos un día completo que antes no se tenía. Bueno, ahora que tengo mi bebé, pues ya pasamos más tiempo con ella. Ya tenemos por lo menos un día para estar con ella todo el día. Se siente uno más seguro por todos los beneficios, pues, y saber todos nuestros derechos.
Mediante el programa se ha hecho posible tener una casa nueva, porque antes estábamos en una traila que estábamos más amontonados, 2 personas en un cuarto, poco espacio. Entonces aquí la nueva vivienda pues ha cambiado demasiado porque todo es nuevo.
Hay algunas personas que le dan miedo para hablar con los dueños o exigirle algo que ocupan o cualquier cosa, ya sea porque pues tienen miedo porque los corran o algo así, los despidan del trabajo. Con el programa nos hace trabajar mejor, más a gusto, más en confianza con los dueños, sabiendo cuáles son nuestros derechos, o sea, de no ser humillado o decir o que te digan cosas que te ofendan. O sea, hay muchos ranchos que pasa eso y por el programa ya no puede pasar eso. Como los del rancheros también se benefician mucho por el programa. Así yo creo que ambos tienen un gran beneficio, como nosotros, un gran beneficio entre ambos.
Y para mí es muy importante que expanda el programa porque por eso el patrón le apoyan a él, pero tampoco también como nosotros como trabajadores tenemos esa voz de ya decir, sabes, quiero un día de descanso, quiero que hagas esto, y eso es algo necesario para cada trabajador, para que nosotros nos sintamos seguros en decir algo, no nos sintamos con miedo, sintamos la seguridad de decirle al patrón, sabes qué, quiero esto, y ya no tengamos tanto miedo a ellos.
Yeah, well, um, thank you so much, Will, for helping us out. And, as we can see, as we heard directly from farm workers that are under the Mill with Dignity program, um, you know, uh, everything is changing. The dairy industry changing. There's a new day. People are living it, and there are many benefits, as we heard. And that's exactly what we wanted the program to do. Um, and it's also important to understand that it's not just benefiting farm workers. It is also transforming the dairy industry by helping farmers as well. So farmers receive a premium for participating on the Mill with Dignity program, and that premium goes directly into improving housing conditions, working conditions, if it's necessary. And if you're in your farm, everything is up to standard. You get to keep that money, right? At the end of the day, you're keeping money in your pocket as a farmer. Um, and one of the as we can see here on this slide, Matt Maxwell, he's a farmer under the program. And here's a quote that he shared on the second year anniversary of the Mill with Dignity program. And that very same day, we launched a new campaign inviting the new corporation to join. And here's the quote from Matt Maxwell. Mill with Dignity allows us to pay the people that do these very important jobs an acceptable wage. It has helped us to make huge strides as an employer. So we can see directly from that that is also impacting farmers in a really good way. It's improving communications between workers, between the management, between the farm owners. And that goes a long way when there is a better communication, when people feel like they can talk to each other. People are safer, people feel happier, and everything, the operation is a success. Also, the Mill with Dignity Standards Council, as Marita was mentioning, is a resource for communication and in some cases training on some topics. So the Mill with Dignity Standards Council, helps to identify and solve problems in a very easy and effective manner because of that trust, right, that has been built between the workers, between the farmers, and between the Mill with Dignity Standards Council. Because right now, and comes with the education too, when you sit on the education session, when you learn your rights and everybody is there to listen to their rights and responsibilities when they're human right violators, that gives you power to speak up because you know that there's going to be no retaliations. You know that there's going to be consequences when somebody violates your rights or abuses your human rights. There are consequences. And when people know that they can speak up and they will not get fired, that is a game changer, right? And that is powerful and empowers workers, as Marita mentioned, to be their frontline monitors of their workplace. And so to understand some of the benefits and so the Mill with Dignity program versus a non-Mill with Dignity farm, we don't have to look that far. Just on the next slide, over a month ago, or close to a month ago, Jose Ramos, a farm worker on a non-Mill with Dignity farm, decided to leave the workplace because he was working really long hours and he just wanted to work on a better workplace with a more dignified schedule. So he decided to step off the farm, but he did not get his wages. And he went back once with a friend and he got kicked out of the property. And he decided to call Migrant Justice and organize. And a staff member of Migrant Justice and Jose both went down to the farm in Addison County to ask for what was rightfully his. And both people, Jose and the Migrant Justice staff, were met with violence, physical violence, and also verbal violence, verbal harassment and threats, calling the police and all of that. And so, really, we can really see the difference between a Mill with Dignity farm and a non-Mill with Dignity farm, right? But the Mill with Dignity Standards Council being there, none of this violence would have happened because there are zero tolerance policies under the program that completely prohibit this from happening. And if it does happen, there has to be immediate action taken or the farm can get kicked out of the program, right? There are consequences. And that is sort of the power of the program, the teeth, what gives the program teeth. And yeah, so, there's a really, this really shows the need to really expand the model, to really expand this program to more farms in Vermont so that more farm workers can benefit from these rights. And so farm workers have been busy. We have been organizing, but at the same time, we have been doing a lot of research and analysis on, where are we going to go next? Who are we going to invite next to be a human rights champion and to, take responsibility for the abuses in their supply chain? And I'll turn it over to Marita.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. I see great questions. So the next slide tells us that our next target is Hannaford. And we want to put another poll. I don't know if you see it on your screen, but try to reply. It's like, who's heard of Hannaford? Has any of you have shopped there? And please let us know. When you answer the question, add submit, and then we're gonna see the results. Can we see the results, or should we wait until the end, Will?
Let's give it 10 more seconds.
Okay, cool. So while we wait for everybody to, oh, it wouldn't let me submit. So submit is at the end of like the question, and I'm gonna see that 55% of you said yes, and I shop there. Others say yes, but I don't shop there, and 10% never heard of it. But now you heard. So now next poll, you can say, yes, you heard about Hannaford, and I'm gonna tell you more about Hannaford. Thank you for that. So Hannaford is a supermarket chain with almost 200 stores around the Northeast. It's a large buyer of dairy throughout the region to sell under the Hannaford brand. Hannaford is owned by Ahold-Delhaize. Ahold-Delhaize is a multinational corporation with an annual global sales of $17.4 billion. Today, there was in the news that due to COVID-19, the demand across our Ahold-Delhaize network in the Eastern USA and Europe increased in the sales. They have, as a result, expect the group net sales growth of approximately 15% in the first quarter. And comparable sales growth, excluding gasoline, is expected to be approximately 14% in the USA. So from the 74 billion that they are making, they are going to make more. And I know everybody has been running to the stores and trying to stack up and try to go less to the stores, but we keep going. So what's happening is they are making more money now. And one thing about Ahold-Delhaize is that has a supply chain program that's called Responsible Retailing Program. They have committed to sourcing practices that respect human rights. Actually, many supermarkets that belong to Ahold-Delhaize are already part of the CIW Fair Food Program, the one in Florida that is sourcing them tomatoes. So Ahold-Delhaize already know about this model. Hannaford, being part of their supply chain, can join this program as well. So when Hannaford joins the Meal with Dignity program, it's going to have an enormous impact in expanding the program and bring the new day to hundreds of workers. It's not going to be only in Vermont, but it's going to be in the Northeast region. So some things to think about Hannaford during this pandemic. Grocery store workers are essential workers as well, just like dairy workers. They are also putting themselves at risk by going into work and ensuring that our food system works during the crisis. We want to say that we're in solidarity with the Hannaford employees and that we believe all workers, from farm workers to cashiers to people stocking the food in the shelves, should be treated with dignity and work in safely conditions. We're going to go to the next slide. So last summer, we invited Hannaford to speak with us. We sent a letter directly to the CEO, and there hasn't been any response. After waiting for that, the community has decided to launch a public campaign on October 3rd. in 2019. It was the second anniversary of signing with Ben & Jerry's. After that big campaign launch, there was still no response. So 1 month later, we coordinated actions in 22 stores, delivering the same letter to the managers to give it back to the CEO. We have had national organizations endorse the campaign and ask Hannaford to join the program. We have sent 3,500 signatures from customers like you asking them to join. Now I'm gonna put another poll and ask if any of you have participated in any of these actions. And let us know by answering this poll. And here you can answer as many questions as apply to your participation or non-participation. Answering Sarah's question, I want to say that when Hannaford joins the Immunity program, it will cover the farm workers in the farms. When I say we're in solidarity with the cashiers and all the people in their food supply, it's because we want them also to organize and they could create their model too. So we have the results of the poll, and it says, surprisingly, 56% of people in this webinar haven't been participating in any of the Hannaford campaign. By being on this webinar, now you're participating, and we hope that you will keep participating, and we're gonna give you some things to do. 15% were at the campaign launch, which is exciting, and 44% have signed the postcard, written a letter, or made calls. So thank you everybody for supporting this, and the ones that not yet, we hope that soon, yes, you will after the webinar. So I just want to say, despite of all these actions, Hannaford still hasn't responded. And that's why we are having these webinars. We were on tour, of course, was canceled because of the crisis. But you can see that all the community, even the youngest members of the community, want Milk with Dignity to come. However, the CEO, you can see him, his name is Maxwell, is playing hard to get. All the workers here, compared to Hannaford, we're a small group of farm workers. They are part of a mega corporation. As I said, bringing 75 billion every year. And despite the huge profits, the money isn't being shared. Neither farm workers in Hannaford supply chains or store employees themselves are benefiting from all the money that they are making. And like I shared before, they are making more now with the pandemic. Especially now that workers are classified as essential workers and exposed to greater risks. There are no adequate recognition or protection. And we see that we are sharing a common struggle and we have a common target. This is a real David and Goliath battle. So the question is, how are we gonna win? We know that every company has the Achilles heel, and it's the brand image. And actually, Maxwell has said that the biggest responsibility I feel like I have is to protect the brand. Our brand is everything. Our Hannaford cornucopia, what it stands for, is critically important. That keeps me up at night. So he is staying up late thinking about this, however, in quarantine while the workers are not. So this is how we're gonna win. We're gonna make them realize that the cost to their brand of not signing is higher than the cost of joining the program. We know it's possible to win because we did it with Ben & Jerry's. Of course, like Abel shared, it wasn't easy. It was almost 3 years of campaigning, but we won. And we know we can win with Hannaford. And as Thelma was saying, we need your support. So on the next slide, we ask you to take action at the end of this webinar. These postcards that you see is we have passed thousands of these to everybody, and if you want those, you can. There is a link there. You can ask for this. We'll send them to you, and then you'll send it back to us because we're collecting these postcards, and we want to bring them to the Hannaford's headquarters. You can sign the postcard, put a comment, share it with your coworkers. You know, now in this times, maybe it's more difficult to share these things because we're not going to places where people are gathering, but still we can use the mail. So remember, if you have a hold of this, send them back to us. See if we go to the next slide. A part of our campaign was convening a big mass mobilization and go to Hannaford headquarters in Scarborough, Maine. We're gonna wait for times to get better and be able to bring workers and as many allies as we can to Maine. But now what is coming up is May 1st. And we are thinking creative ways to recognize the workers, not only on the farms, but all the workers that are right now risking their lives going to work at the hospitals, at the stores, childcare, and other places. And we're going to give more information about the action on May 1st, but stay in tune and check out with us and reach out if you want to participate on an action on May 1st. And this is because, you know, we all together, we really can help organize together, and we need the power of the people, and we need you with this, because we want to show to the company that farm workers are not alone, that everybody cares. And even if you don't drink milk or don't get any dairy product, this is about human rights. And we want to show them that you care about human rights. So I'm going to pass it to Abel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marita. So yes, if we go to the, I think we're right on that slide. This is our information. Yeah, as Marita mentioned, we want you to stay plugged in, stay, you know, right now I know people are staying home. If you're staying home, you know, keep up to date, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. We're gonna be uploading some videos from workers, sharing their perspective on what is happening. But yeah, you know, right now, if you want to take like a picture of this, you know, so that you can follow us and all of that on social media, that'll be awesome. And yeah, one of the things that we want to do now, I think we want to open it up for questions. This was our presentation. Thank you so much for staying with us, and we want to now open it up for questions.
And you can ask questions either by unmuting yourself, raising your hand, or putting on the chat.
I was wondering, has there been any discussion about, like, have you guys tried for Cabot Cheese? That company, are they on the radar at all for companies that you guys are looking into for the human rights campaigns and stuff?
Hi, Eleanor. Thank you for the question. That's a really good question. When we were campaigning with Ben & Jerry's and we're making the analysis about who's the next target, Cabot came in mind. Why we decided Hannaford is because that will bring more impact directly to the farm worker community here and also outside of Vermont. And the challenge with Cabot is that it's a co-op. So to get into this program, we have to think more about how to have the same farmers paying themselves a premium. So until we get to that point, the community in their analysis has decided that Hannaford is the best next target. But Cabot hopefully will be in the future.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Maybe just to add a little bit to that, you know, basically it's like Marita said, following the money. You know, where is the money at the end of the supply chain? Who has the money at the end of the supply chain? And it's Hannaford's, right? And they're the ones that are benefiting from 74 billions in the pockets as part of this multi-corporation, and farm workers and farmers are being squeezed.
All right, coming in from the chat, we had a couple questions that we hadn't had a chance to answer yet. So from Kendall, Kendall asked, if people shop at Hannaford, should they stop? Should they stop shopping at Hannaford's?
Thank you, Kendall. So we're not boycotting the store. We're inviting them to be in a conversation with workers. And if the time to boycott comes, we will talk with our community. But for now, it's not that. However, if you go to Hannaford for shopping, we have some flyers that you can give to the cashiers or the assistant. I'm forgetting the phrase, like customer assistant, and they can send the message to their manager and to go to the CEO.
Yeah, and I think what we're doing now is that, our energy and our focus is going for like this, whenever that big sort of mobilization at the Scarborough, and I think we'll need a lot of support around that. And I think farm workers are prioritizing, May 1st, some of that action. And yeah, Marita mentioned, until farm workers sort of say, hey, let's do this, and now we really need to like stop us, allies to stop shopping, but until then, I don't think, there's the actions and other things.
Thank you, Abel and Marita. There was some conversation happening in the chat as well about what farms participate in the Milk with Dignity program. And some people were asking, can we see that list, because we want to be able to spend money in solidarity with Migrant Justice? How would you respond to that question?
Yeah, so the list is not public. There are confidentiality about that. However, you might know that these farms are supplying to Ben & Jerry's, because Ben & Jerry's signed the agreement. And in order to support Migrant Justice, you can donate to Migrant Justice or also participate on these events.
Are there additional questions, folks who haven't yet written into the chat or who'd like to take themselves off mute? And you can ask it right here. We got a hand from Hazel. I'll unmute you here. Go for it, Hazel.
This is Eloise, her sister. But our question is a group question. We are wondering, how has coronavirus, COVID-19, been impacting workers in Vermont and I guess around the country? If you have your networks, maybe even the people in Florida, how are they doing? Because there's more people there that are maybe overall impacted in Vermont. But what are some of the new standards, and how are they being enforced, and how can we help as like Vermonters to make sure that people are being safe and while still working and being essential workers? Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Hi, Hazel.
Hello.
So, yeah, that's a good question that we've been answering and also asking the community, the impact. One thing is this kind of new understanding of being called essential workers after being called criminals, people that are taking the jobs of others, unseen. And so being called essential workers, what does that mean really? And how they can still work and put at risk their lives without protections. So some efforts from the community has been NOFA Vermont has created Milkers Relief. So if somebody gets sick, they can find someone that will go and take those shifts. We have partnered with them to add in the initiative that the farmer should still pay the worker that gets sick, and that the worker that comes to replace that is temporary, so people doesn't lose their jobs. There's also the law that passed for businesses with less than 500 workers that covers sick days. So farm workers will be able to be eligible if the farmer applies. The only challenge with this is that only covers 80 hours, so 2 weeks of work, thinking that people work only 40 hours per week. We know that workers work 60 to 80 hours a week. So it might not cover all the shifts, but it's something that they can apply. The stimulus of the government that we've seen that is going to be given to people, workers, immigrant workers are not eligible to get that. So there's some creative ideas around the country with different other organizations that are trying to create funds for immigrants. We're trying to figure out here a way to do it. There is a group in Addison County that started to raise funds for food and especially food for people that are in quarantine or without jobs. There is a worrisome around the community. They hear from employers that they are going to have a meeting because maybe the hours are going to be cut. People are now prohibited to leave the farms or receive visitors, which creates more isolation. Access to food has been also something that has been a concern for the community. There is an initiative, and maybe you are involved in different areas of the state where you can fill a form if you have needs for grocery shopping. We've been able to translate those forms into Spanish. So what happened is like the community members, farm workers fill out that form. The results come to me and I connect with volunteers depending on the area. And so far it's been working. Now it's increasing the ask for grocery shopping. So those are small things that we can do now, but I think the community is really thinking in the big picture, what other things should be done at a bigger scale to recognize these workers that are criminalized and also being deported for any reason. There are other initiatives in other states that we are looking into, that if you are an essential worker, you should get some kind of a status. And so yeah, there are different things that the people are thinking. It's a big impact. And the workers want to be recognized. They want to be seen not only now in time of crisis, but all the time.
And I'll add that there's, we also, there's a coordinating committee as part of Migrant Justice, which is a group of farm workers, sort of decides on the direction that we go and what do we focus on. And we were just meeting and talking about sort of what were we going to do to educate the community. So there's a lot of education that is being done already. From worker to worker, sharing just like things on Facebook and social media, because there's a lot of the farms. One of the things that are happening is that they're not allowing people to come into the farms because they don't want somebody to bring the virus. So, people are not leaving the farms even to go shopping, like Marita mentioned. But there's a lot of education being done, and you mentioned CAW. They shared with us some of the resources that they're going to be using for education on the fields. Recognizing, that in Florida is just something that is waiting to happen. Many people are going to get sick, and so they're trying to do that. And, and in Vermont as well, conditions, people are sleeping in overcrowded housing, living in overcrowded housing, and it's just a matter of time before something happens. And we're doing as much education as we can on health and safety, on how to take the necessary precautions, but understanding that, for decades and decades and decades, workers have faced these conditions. There has been no protective equipment and all of that. And this is, it's unfortunate that this is happening, but, workers have to continue to shop, to work. But yeah, we're doing a bunch of education and in different forms and ways to spread the word.
And so we have a conversation happening in the chat. That's great to see. Folks were asking about these solidarity funds for people who are getting stimulus checks or relief checks, and who don't need it, or whose income hasn't been affected by this crisis, how to donate to people who have been excluded from receiving these checks, especially those who have been excluded but are still being called on to work, classified as essential workers. And so in the coming days and weeks, you can look to our social media and our website, or if you're on our email list, you can expect to see more information about these funds. There are several that have been set up, and we will be connecting people with opportunities to donate. We also had a question about, for folks who are interested in volunteering to be part of these mutual aid networks, bringing groceries. How can people best get connected to that?
Thank you. So depending on the area that you live now, there are different forms. There is a group on Facebook. I don't know if everybody's on Facebook. That is called How Can I Help Support During COVID-19. And depending the towns, there is a Google form that you fill out as a volunteer. If you don't find that, send us an email, and I could connect it with the group in your area. But the fastest will be to connect with the group in your area, fill out this form, and then if we get a need from your area, we will connect with the person in charge of your area, and they will connect with you.
And perhaps for those who aren't on Facebook, you could send us an email at info@migrantjustice.net and let us know your interest and availability. We'll put that in the chat as well. We have a couple other questions coming in. Are hand-sewn protective cloth masks useful for workers and families of workers?
So I've been reading a lot about this because myself, I have a family member that goes to work every day. And I think depending on the cloth of the mask and some filters that have to be there, there is a proof to make you use spray to see if the water passed through the mask. If it doesn't, then it helps. Now, dairy workers use masks for everyday tasks, not only to, right now in the crisis, they use it for chemicals and dust. So we were worrying about the shortage of this as well. But yeah, if your hand-sewn protective cloth masks are proof, and then they might work.
Okay, and we have a question from Alessandra. Go ahead, Alessandra.
Thank you, Will. You know, I'm working with 3 different farms, from one family on a farm to one of the Migrant Justice Milk with Dignity farms, and then a very large farm. And nowhere, I mean, on the one farm, the Migrant Justice farm, the owner actually came up to me and asked me who I was. So I introduced myself and gave him my number. I told him what I was doing, and he asked me to please let the workers know that he would like them to wear masks. So I found it interesting that he was asking me. Someone he did, you know, I just was introducing myself to him because I was there. Somebody had a need that I was following up on. The other farm, the large farm, absolutely, when I talk to the workers, the farmer says, no, he's not worried about it. And I've been asking for over a month. I've now told them how much I really think it's important that they wear masks. So Marita, they're not always wearing masks at this large farm. And so I put out to the community on a forum that I need over 100 masks so that they can have at least 2 so that they can wash them. Also, some of these live just in a small trailer with just the one family or a few people, but then there's the house with lots of people, plus there's the farm workers that are Vermonters that come and go off the land. And to me, that's probably one of the biggest risks, because where I live, when I'm going out shopping for them or doing errands for them, people are not wearing masks over here in the kingdom. You know, very few of us are. So to me, that's kind of a dangerous situation that is now that they're exposed to. Even though now, even the ones that used to go out shopping, you know, we've had lots of discussions and we're saying, don't go out. I'll do what I can. You know, I don't have people at home that I can bring it back to. I have all the protective gear that I know I can use, you know, and I feel like that's one way. But what I don't have is and you know, my Spanish is not with them. So is there some kind of material that's written in Spanish for them that is something something they could keep in their homes to remind them, because we're talking people working 12 and 15 hours a day, right? And I know that they're already clearly so organized around their health because they had to through life, living in those conditions. But yeah, I think the most important thing is that they have masks, that they don't go out, and that they really keep reminding each other and them, themselves to protect themselves, even if it seems like, they're in isolation. They're not, especially if a farmer isn't even concerned about it, right?
Yeah, thank you, Alessandra. And for the farms under the milkweed, for the farms under the milkweed program, there is gonna be an email, and the Milkweed Standards Council have been distributing information in Spanish for the workers. Unfortunately, we hear employers are not giving information of how to take care. Most of the information comes from the TV or Facebook or other things. So yeah, trying to have people wear masks is something that even, yeah, I see regular people on the streets not wearing masks, but there is an effort to educate more about this. But thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we have a question. Probably have time for one or two more questions. So we have from George. Hey, George, glad to have you on. The dairy industry has been hit here in Vermont by COVID-19. Are farm workers going to have to face layoffs?
So this is a new concern we heard from workers. As shared before, there have seen some farms. There is a farm that closed, I think, 2 days ago. Our organizers have been in contact with the workers trying to figure it out, what happened. We know that other farms have seen that they are going to have meetings to short schedules or hours. And so yes, it's going to be an impact, and we have to figure out what to do, because housing is going to be a problem. Housing comes with the farm work, and if you don't work in the farm, you probably lose your house. Or even if somebody gets sick, as Abel was explaining, and there's not enough space in the house, it's not possible to isolate someone that is sick. So yes, there's going to be a layoff probably.
And it's already happening. I mean, we already seen, at least from a couple of workers that we've been in contact, that people are being fired, and and related or not to COVID-19. I mean, the fact that people are getting fired right in the middle of this crisis, and as a farm worker, if you are living near the border, I mean, where are you going to go? I mean, right, and that is sort of one of the things that that is happening, and it's a concern for our coordinating committee. So we're trying to think about, like, under the program, there are, you cannot just get fired for any reason, right? So we're trying to think about the long haul. We need more companies to come under the programs, because under the program we have protection for workers. There are sick days, there's protections, right? And we need more of that, and I think that's why we want to expand the program so that other workers can have those same rights. So it makes a huge difference for farms to be under the program while this crisis is happening. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we are coming up on our end time at 7:30. So we want to thank everybody for participating in this webinar. We want to give a big round of applause to Abel and Marita for taking us through this presentation and responding to our questions. And we're going to take everybody off mute so we can say our goodbyes.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
We off mute? Yes, we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we can.